Are you watering your guitars? What's up? Welcome back. My name is Ethan, and this is my guitar room. And I'm going to tell you how I maintain my guitars year-round to keep them in tip-top shape. Now, if I'm ever going out of town, and I won't be around home for a few days, I always have to find a dog sitter. And that involves the typical have them come over, meet the dog, give them the instructions. But my instructions are a bit different. Yeah, I tell them how to feed my dog, when, how much, but I also tell my dog sitter to water my guitars. Now, maybe you already know what I'm getting at, but in case you're new to this or just don't know yet, I'm talking about humidity. Most guitars are made out of wood, and humidity will affect the wood in the guitar, especially with acoustic guitars. It's important for electrics as well, but because the acoustic guitar is made up of a thinner piece of wood for the body, it's going to be more prone to having issues. And as humidity increases, your guitar is going to absorb moisture from the air, and that causes things to expand. And when there's low humidity and the air is dry, your guitars will also dry out, and that causes them to shrink a little bit. And both of these things can wreak havoc on your setup. When a guitar dries out, you might start to feel some fret ends poking out, and it's just a sharp piece of metal that's grabbing your hand while you're trying to play. Now, some of that is unavoidable, and if you're having those problems with your frets, it's a really easy fix. If you're not comfortable doing it, just take it to a guitar shop. But they're basically just going to file down the ends of the frets so it's not sticking out anymore. If you look at different places, you might see a few different numbers, but generally the humidity that you want to store your guitars at is around 40 to 55%. And a really easy way to monitor that is by picking up one of these. This was only a few dollars from Walmart, but it tells me the humidity and temperature in my room, so I can make sure I'm keeping it where it needs to be. And temperature is another thing you want to try to keep under control. Ideal temperatures for guitar storage are between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have a hard time staying within either of those ranges, and I'm about to tell you how I do it, just do your best to try to keep it consistent. If you store your guitars in an environment where the temperature and humidity don't change at all, then your guitar is going to stay pretty much how it is. And the more often it changes and the guitar dries out and then soaks up some moisture again and dries out again, the more often it does that, the more issues you're likely to have. And that's where you might get some fret buzzing. It needs a whole new setup because everything's different. Maybe your intonation's off. And for acoustic guitars, you could even have some bracing that's glued into the inside separate from the body. And that's going to be a little bit more difficult to fix. You're probably going to have to take it to somebody who knows what they're doing to both identify where the problem is and actually fix it for you. All of that to say, you should at least try to keep your guitars in a friendly environment for them. Okay, so how do you maintain the temperature for your guitar? The room I'm in is in the basement of my house, so in the summer, it's usually pretty cold. So I have a space heater in here that I have set to about 72 degrees, and when it drops down below 70, the space heater turns on, and it turns itself off at 72. And I keep the door closed to this room, and the room stays right around that 70 to 72 degree range. If you're storing your guitars on an upper level, you might have the opposite problem where your room gets warmer than the rest of the house. And that's a little bit harder to deal with. It's not as simple as a space heater. They're pretty cheap and easy to use. But at least do what you can to keep the room cool. Maybe open windows or have some fans. But if it's running a little bit on the warm side, it's not the end of the world. Let's say you are storing your guitars in their cases. Maybe you throw them in a closet and don't really pay attention to what else is going on around them. If that's the case, try to at least avoid putting them in a closet that's right against an exterior wall, because that's where you're going to have more temperature changes based on what's happening outside. And I would recommend, maybe leave the door open so there's some airflow through wherever you're storing the cases, but if you let them sit in just a dead space that's getting really hot or really cold, it's not going to be the best for them. And of course, I'm talking about more long-term storage. If you're just walking from your car to your house and it's cold outside or it's hot outside, the guitar will be fine. But please don't leave your guitar in your car overnight when it's freezing outside. If you haven't yet, please do me a favor and subscribe to my channel. Give this video a like. Leave a comment. Let me know how you maintain your guitars. Subscribing costs you nothing, and it helps me out. And according to my analytics, like 99% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed. So, just do a guy a favor. Now let's talk about the humidity. If your guitars are just living in their cases, you can get some humidity regulating packs to just throw in the case. Or for an acoustic guitar, there are some things that you can moisten a sponge and put it in this little plastic thing that slides down between your guitar strings. And the idea being that as that water evaporates from the sponge, it will keep the inside of the guitar humidified. And that works, at least to some degree, as long as you remember to keep going back and moistening that sponge. If you forget, it's just going to dry out and definitely won't be doing you any good. But if you're like me and you keep your guitars out of their cases and maybe have a dedicated room for it, there are some things you can do to regulate the humidity. If your humidity is too high, you're going to need a dehumidifier. I'm not aware of any way around that, really. That's kind of your only option. Get a dehumidifier. The one that I have is adjustable, so it maintains humidity between 45 and 50% in this room. But most of the time, my environment is dry rather than too humid. And for that, you want a humidifier. And there are many options out there when it comes to humidifiers, but I'm just going to tell you what I've learned from trial and error over the last few years. If you're out shopping for humidifiers, you're going to see both cool mist and warm air options. Now, I had a cool mist humidifier that I used for a few years, and the reason I got that one was it would automatically turn itself on and off. And it did the job. It kept the humidity where I wanted it. But the water in my house has some minerals in it. It's not completely pure. So when the cool mist humidifier was on, it was blowing moisture and all of those minerals into the air. And everything in my room would be covered with white dust in just a couple of days. And it looked like I hadn't cleaned in forever. So I don't necessarily recommend that unless you know you have really good pure water. The warm air option works completely different. It's heating up the water and making it steam, and that's what's creating your humidity. And when it does that, the water's evaporating, but it's leaving all of those minerals behind, so it doesn't make everything dusty. Now, the warm air ones are a little bit finicky. They can get worn out quicker, or sometimes they'll have a buildup around the heat element that you need to go in and clean out. But for me, that couple times a year cleaning out the humidifier is way better than having my entire room covered in dust. And the downside with the warm air humidifiers is they're not self-regulating. At least I haven't found a good option that's a self-regulating warm air humidifier. So that means you're going to have to keep an eye on your room and either adjust your humidifier or turn it off throughout the day to keep it consistent. And I have a trick for that. This is a timer like you would typically see somebody using with Christmas lights. And you plug it into your wall, and then you plug your humidifier into it, and then you can adjust how many hours a day and in what intervals your humidifier will turn on and off. And for me, this has worked great. I just check my humidity. If it's a little bit low, I'll make it turn on a little bit more throughout the day. And if it's a little too high, I'll do the opposite. But it's pretty hassle-free once you get it dialed in, and it's really convenient to not have to be checking the room every couple of hours to see what's happening. And of course, like with the temperature, if you're doing this in a room, keep the door closed. That will let all that moisture stay in that room and not escape into the rest of the house. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a bit meticulous about this stuff, so if you're not as concerned, then just do what works for you. But I've been able to maintain pretty consistent temperatures and humidity, and because of that, my guitars rarely need adjustments. Anyways, that's it for today. Just take care of your stuff. If you take care of your equipment, it's going to treat you well in return. So save yourself the hassle of constant adjustments or even needing major repairs just because you were careless. Hopefully you found this helpful, and let me know what you think in the comments. And like I said earlier, just do me a favor and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're still here, thanks for watching all the way to the end. I'll catch you in the next one.